week passed. Mason went to work each day at the mining colony, fixing machines and keeping his head down. Each night he returned to his hab module where Lyra waited. She was getting stronger every day. Lyra told Mason about her people, the Celesti. They were an old race who had traveled the stars for thousands of years. The Celesti were known for their advanced technology and their peaceful ways. But then the Dracon came. They look like what you might call reptiles, Lyra explained one night. Their skin absorbs light. They live for conquest. Mason listened, trying to understand a war that spanned the stars. And you? What did you do before they captured you? Lyra touched the crystal in her arm. It glowed softly under her silvery blue skin. I was a scientist. I designed ships. Weapons too when the war started. One morning, as Mason was getting ready for work, alarms sounded across the colony. He turned on his comm unit to hear the emergency broadcast. Attention all colonists. Unknown vessels have entered Mars orbit. This is not a drill. All personnel must report to emergency shelters immediately. Mason looked at Lyra. Her purple eyes were wide with fear. They're here, she whispered. The Dracon? She nodded. 3 hunter ships at least. They won't stop until they find me. Mason's comm unit buzzed again. This is Colony Director Hayes. We have received a communication from the vessels in orbit. They claim to be representatives of something called the Dracon Imperium. They are demanding the return of what they call their property, a fugitive who crash-landed on Mars last week. Lyra's hands shook. They'll tear this colony apart looking for me. Mason made a quick decision. We need to leave Mars. How? They'll be watching for any ships trying to leave. Mason thought for a moment. Your escape pod, it had engines, right? Could we use parts from it to modify my transport vessel? Lyra's eyes lit up. Yes. With Celesti technology, we might be able to mask our signature from Dracon sensors. I have a small transport ship in the colony hangar. It's old, but it works. I use it for supply runs sometimes. I'll need tools, Lyra said, already moving with new energy, and parts from my pod. It's too dangerous for you to go outside now. Then you'll have to be my hands, Lyra said. She took off a thin bracelet and gave it to Mason. This will record what you see. I can tell you what parts to take. Mason nodded. He packed some food and water, knowing this might be the last time he saw his home. Where will we go if we get off Mars? Europa, Lyra said. Jupiter's moon. It's far enough that we might lose them and the ice will help hide us. Mason put on his spacesuit and headed out. The colony was in chaos. People were running to shelters, carrying what they could. No one paid attention to Mason as he took his rover and drove out to the crash site. When he reached Lyra's pod, he activated the bracelet. Lyra's voice came through clearly. I can see what you see. The main drive core should be intact. It's under the floor panel. Mason worked quickly, removing parts as Lyra instructed. Suddenly, a shadow passed overhead. He looked up to see a black ship unlike any he had ever seen before. It was moving slowly, scanning the ground. Don't move, Lyra's voice was tense. Their sensors are good, but they're looking for me, not you. Mason froze, watching as the ship passed by. It was heading toward the colony. They're going to find your pod soon, he said. We have enough, Lyra replied. Get back to the transport ship now. Mason loaded the parts into his rover and raced back to the colony. The streets were empty now, everyone in shelters. He made it to the hangar and found his transport ship. A small vessel, designed for short trips within the Mars system. He loaded the Celesti parts and then returned to his hab module for Lyra. She had packed the few things they would need and was ready to go. The colony is sending out messages, Mason said as they hurried back to the hangar. They're telling the Dracon they don't know anything about a crashed alien ship or a fugitive. It won't matter, Lyra said sadly. The Dracon don't believe in innocence. They reached the transport ship and sealed the doors. Lyra immediately began working, connecting the Celesti technology to the human ship. Her hands moved with incredible speed and skill. This might work, she said as she finished. The Celesti drive core will mask our energy signature. To their sensors will look like background radiation. Mason started the engines. The ship hummed to life, now with a strange blue glow pulsing through its systems. Ready? He asked. Lyra nodded, strapping herself into the co-pilot seat. Ready? They lifted off, the ship moving more smoothly than it ever had before. Mason kept low, flying just above the Martian surface to avoid detection as long as possible. When they were far enough from the colony, he pointed the ship upward and pushed the engines to full power. The sky darkened around them as they left Mars behind. Mason checked the sensors but saw no sign of pursuit. "It's working," Lyra said, a smile spreading across her face. "They can't see us." Their relief was short-lived. As they cleared Mars orbit, alarms sounded in the cockpit. 3 large shapes appeared on the sensors, moving fast from the direction of the colony. "Dracon hunter ships," Lyra said, her voice tight. "They must have detected our launch. Can they catch us?"
"Yes, their ships are faster than this one, even with the modifications." Mason pushed the engines harder.
The ship shuddered around them. "We just need to reach the asteroid belt. We can hide there until they give up." Lyra shook her head. "They won't give up. Not while I have this." She touched the crystal in her arm. "This contains the plans for the Starweaver." "What's the Starweaver?" "The most advanced warship ever designed by the Celesti. With it, we could turn the tide of the war against the Dracon." The hunter ships were gaining on them. Mason could see them now through the viewport, black, angular vessels that seemed to swallow the light around them. "They're charging weapons," Lyra warned. Mason made a hard turn, diving toward a cluster of asteroids ahead. The first shots from the Dracon ships missed, but just barely. The energy beams lit up the darkness of space around them. "Can this ship hold together through the asteroid field?" Lyra asked. "Let's find out," Mason replied, his hand steady on the controls. They entered the asteroid field at full speed. Mason weaved between the floating rocks, using them as shields against the Dracon weapons. The hunter ships followed, more cautious now in the dangerous field. A blast caught the edge of their ship, sending it spinning. Mason fought for control as warning lights flashed across the control panel. "Engine 2 is down," he said. "We're losing power." Lyra moved to a damaged panel and pulled it open. Inside, the Celesti technology was flickering. She placed her hands on it, and the crystal in her arm glowed brighter. Somehow the ship's power stabilized. "How did you do that?" Mason asked in amazement. "The crystal responds to me," Lyra explained. "It's linked to my genetic code." They continued through the asteroid field, the Dracon ship still in pursuit but falling farther behind. When they reached the other side, Mason set course for Jupiter, pushing their damaged ship as hard as he dared. "We might make it," he said, checking their course. "If the ship holds together." Lyra looked at him, her purple eyes serious. "Why are you doing this, Mason? You could have given me to them. You would have been safe." Mason thought about it. "Maybe I'm tired of people who think they can own others. Maybe I don't like bullies, whether they're human or not." Lyra smiled and placed her hand over his. "The Celesti have a saying. Stars die so that new worlds may live. Sometimes great change requires great sacrifice." Mason wasn't sure what she meant by that, but he knew one thing for certain. He had never felt more alive than he did right now, racing through space with an alien woman, being chased by an interstellar empire. Whatever happened next, there was no going back to his quiet life on Mars. As Jupiter grew larger in their viewport, Mason wondered what would be waiting for them on Europa. And he wondered what the Dracon would do to Earth when they discovered who had helped their prisoner escape. The universe had suddenly become a much bigger and more dangerous place. But looking at Lyra, seeing her determination and courage, Mason knew he had made the right choice. Some things were worth fighting for. The red dust of Mars swirled around Mason Carter as he drove his rover across the empty plains. He was far from the mining colony where he worked, checking on some equipment at the edge of their territory. The sun was setting, making the red planet look even more red than usual. Mason was tired. He had been working on Mars for 3 years now. Before that, he was in the Earth military as an engineer. Now he fixed machines for the mining company and kept to himself. He liked the quiet of Mars. Most days he only talked to his machines. A flash of light in the sky caught his eye. At first he thought it was just the sun reflecting off something. Then he saw it was moving. Something was falling from the sky, leaving a trail of fire behind it. "That's not one of ours," Mason said to himself. All ships coming to Mars were tracked and scheduled. This was something else. The object crashed about 2 miles away. Mason saw the dust cloud rise up when it hit the ground. He should have called it in to the colony. That was the rule. But something made him turn his rover toward the crash instead. When he got closer, he could see it was a ship. It wasn't like any ship he had ever seen before. It was smaller than Earth ships, with a smooth shape that reminded him of a teardrop. The outside had lines that glowed with blue light. Part of it was broken open from the crash. Mason put on his helmet and checked his oxygen levels. He had enough for a few hours. He stepped out onto the Martian surface and walked slowly toward the strange ship. "Hello?" he called over his radio, even though he knew no one would hear him if they were inside the ship. "Anyone alive in there?" The ship made no sound. Mason found the opening in the hull and looked inside. The inside glowed with the same blue light as the outside. It was one room with what looked like controls at the front, and there, strapped to a chair at those controls, was a woman. At least she looked almost like a woman. Her skin was a silvery blue color that seemed to glow slightly. Her hair was white and floating around her head like she was underwater. She was wearing a tight suit that looked like it was made of the same material as the ship. Most shocking of all, she had chains around her wrists, keeping her tied to the chair. She was a prisoner. The woman's eyes opened. They were completely purple with no white parts. She looked at Mason and said something he couldn't understand. Her voice sounded like music. "I don't understand," Mason said. "Are you hurt?" The woman pulled at her chains and spoke again, more urgently this time. Mason looked around the ship and saw a small device on the floor. It looked like it had fallen during the crash. He picked it up and it lit up in his hand. "Can you understand me now?" the woman asked, her voice coming from the device. "Yes," Mason said, surprised. "Who are you? What is this ship?" "My name is Lyra. This is an escape pod from a Dracon research vessel. Please, you must help me. They will be looking for me." Mason looked at the chains on her wrists. "Who will be looking for you?" "The Dracon. They are—" Lyra struggled to find the words. "They are not good. They took me from my people. I was their prisoner." Mason didn't know what to think. He had never heard of the Dracon. Until this moment, he hadn't even known for sure that aliens existed. Earth governments had rumors, but nothing confirmed. "Why should I trust you?" he asked. Lyra looked at him with those strange purple eyes. "You shouldn't, you don't know me. But they will come for me. And when they do, they will not care about you or anyone else on this planet. They will destroy everything to get me back." Mason thought for a moment. He had seen enough war on Earth to know when someone was truly afraid. Lyra was terrified. He took out his tools and began working on her chains. "I'm Mason," he said as he worked. "Mason Carter." "Thank you, Mason," Lyra said softly. When the chains came off, Lyra rubbed her wrists. They were raw and bleeding a strange silver liquid. She tried to stand but fell back into the chair. "I'm weak," she said. "The escape took everything I had." Mason made a quick decision. "I have a place. A small hab module away from the main colony. No one goes there but me. You can hide there until you're stronger." Lyra nodded. "The Dracon will come soon. They can track this pod. Can you walk to my rover?" "I will try." Mason helped Lyra out of the ship. She was lighter than she looked, and her skin felt warm despite the freezing temperatures of Mars. As they walked to his rover, she looked up at the sky. "Your planet is beautiful," she said. "It's not my planet. I'm from Earth." "Earth," Lyra repeated the word. "How far is Earth from here?" "About 140 million miles right now," Mason said as he helped her into the rover. Lyra smiled for the first time. "That's nothing. The Dracon Empire spans thousands of light years." Mason felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold of Mars. He started the rover and headed back toward his hab module. "What did they want with you?" he asked as they drove. Lyra touched her arm, where a strange crystal seemed to be embedded in her skin. "I have something they want. Something that could change the balance of power in this part of the galaxy." "And what do you want?" Lyra looked at him. "Freedom, and to go home to my people." They reached Mason's hab module just as night fell fully on Mars. It was a small place with just one room for living and a tiny bathroom. Mason helped Lyra inside and gave her water and some food. Not sure if she could eat it. She tried a little and seemed fine. "You can sleep here," he said, pointing to his bed. "I'll take the floor." "Why are you helping me?" Lyra asked. Mason thought about it. "I don't know. Maybe because you needed help. Or maybe because I've been alone out here too long." Lyra touched his hand. Her fingers were cool now. "The Dracon believe that humans are primitive and weak. But I think they are wrong. There is strength in kindness." Mason didn't know what to say to that. He made a bed for himself on the floor and tried to sleep, but his mind was racing. Tomorrow he would have to go back to work like nothing had happened. Like he didn't have an alien woman hiding in his home. Like the universe hadn't just gotten a whole lot bigger and more dangerous. In the darkness, he heard Lyra's voice, soft and musical. "Thank you, Mason of Earth, I will not forget this." Mason closed his eyes, wondering what he had gotten himself into. Outside, the winds of Mars blew across the empty plains, carrying the red dust that covered everything. Somewhere up there, beyond the thin Martian atmosphere, something was coming, and Mason knew deep down that his life would never be the same again. Jupiter loomed large in the viewport, its swirling storms visible even from a distance. Mason guided their damaged ship toward Europa, the ice-covered moon that was their best hope for safety. Behind them, the Dracon hunter ships had fallen back but were still following. "They're being careful," Lyra said, watching the sensor readings. "They don't want to damage the crystal." The ship shuddered as they entered Europa's thin atmosphere. Mason fought with the controls, trying to keep them stable. "There," he said, pointing to a cluster of lights on the surface. "That's the research station." Europa Station was a small human outpost built to study the moon's vast ocean, hidden beneath its icy crust. It was home to 30 scientists and support staff, all working for Earth's International Space Agency. Mason opened a communication channel. "Europa Station, this is transport vessel MC-17 requesting emergency landing. We've sustained damage and are being pursued." A woman's voice responded, "MC-17, this is Europa Station Director Alicia Winters. Our sensors show 3 unidentified vessels behind you." "What's going on?" "No time to explain fully," Mason said. "Those ships are alien vessels, hostile. We need shelter and fast." There was a long pause. Then, "Granted, MC-17, land at Pad 2. Security will meet you." Mason guided the ship down, fighting against the failing systems. They hit the landing pad harder than he wanted, but the ship held together. Outside, he could see people in environmental suits running toward them. "They won't understand," Lyra said nervously. "They'll be afraid of me." "Just let me do the talking," Mason replied. "These are scientists. They'll listen to reason." They opened the airlock and stepped out onto Europa's surface. The gravity was low, making Lyra seem to almost float. 4 security officers approached, weapons drawn. Behind them was a woman in a station director's uniform, her helmet showing a stern face with dark eyes. "Mason Carter," Mason said quickly, "former Earth military engineer, now contractor on Mars. This is Lyra. She's a refugee from a race called the Celesti. Those ships up there are Dracon hunters. They want her back." Director Winters looked at Lyra, her eyes widening at the alien's glowing skin and purple eyes. "Get inside," she said finally. "Now." They followed her into the station. The security team sealed the airlock behind them. Inside, the station was cramped but functional, with narrow corridors and small rooms built for efficiency rather than comfort. In the main control room, Director Winters turned to face them. "Explain. Everything." Mason told her about finding Lyra's crashed pod on Mars, about the Dracon ships that had come looking for her, and about their escape. Lyra spoke too, explaining the war between her people and the Dracon. "The crystal in my arm contains plans for a ship that could change the course of the war," she said. "That's why they want me back," Director Winters frowned. "So you've brought an interstellar war to my doorstep." "We had nowhere else to go," Mason said. "The Dracon would have destroyed the Mars colony looking for her." One of the scientists, a man named Dr. Ellis, stepped forward. "Director, do you realize what this means? Confirmed intelligent alien life. 2 different species. This changes everything we thought we knew." "It also puts us in danger," Winters replied. She looked at Lyra. "Can these Dracon detect you through our station walls?" Lyra shook her head. "The ice of Europa disrupts their sensors. That's why we came here. But they won't leave. They'll wait. And eventually they'll lose patience and come looking," Mason added. Winters paced the room, thinking. "Earth Command needs to know about this." She turned to her communications officer. "Send a message to Earth, Priority 1. "That will take 40 minutes to reach Earth," the officer said, "and just as long for a reply." "Then we have 80 minutes to figure out our next move," Winters said. She looked at Lyra. "You said the crystal contains ship plans. Can our scientists help you translate them? If Earth is going to be involved in this war, we should at least understand the technology." Lyra hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, but the crystal is connected to me. I can't remove it without risk." "Then you'll work with my team," Winters decided. "Dr. Ellis set up Lab 3 for this project." As the scientists prepared, Mason pulled Winters aside. "Thank you for helping us. Winters gave him a hard look. I haven't decided if I'm helping you yet, Carter. I'm protecting my station and gathering information. There's a difference. The Dracon are the real enemy here, Mason insisted. You haven't seen what they're capable of. And I hope I never do, Winters replied. Now go get cleaned up. There are spare quarters in Section D. You look like you haven't slept in days. Mason realized she was right. The escape from Mars and the long flight to Europa had left him exhausted. He found the quarters, a tiny room with just a bed and a small bathroom, and showered for the first time in days. When he finished, he found fresh clothes waiting for him. When he returned to the main section of the station, he found Lyra working with Dr. Ellis and 2 other scientists. She had her arm placed on a scanner and the crystal inside was glowing brightly. On a screen above, complex diagrams were appearing, ship designs unlike anything humans had created. Amazing, Dr. Ellis was saying. The power requirements alone are beyond our current understanding. In these navigation systems, Lyra looked up and saw Mason. She smiled, and he noticed how at ease she seemed among the scientists. This was her world. Technology, research, discovery, how's it going? Mason asked. Your scientists learn quickly, Lyra said. They understand concepts that took my people generations to develop. Humans are good at adaptation, Mason replied. It's our best quality. Director Winters entered the lab, her face grim. We've received a response. From Earth Command, everyone turned to listen. They want us to detain the alien, Lyra, and prepare her for transport back to Earth. They're sending a military vessel. Mason stepped forward. That's a mistake. The Dracon will intercept any ship leaving Europa. I agree, Winters said, surprising him, which is why I'm not going to follow those orders. Not yet, anyway. Dr. Ellis looked shocked. Director, that's against protocol. Protocol didn't prepare us for first contact with 2 alien races in one day, Winters replied sharply. She turned to Lyra. I think you should continue your work. The more we understand about this technology, the better prepared we'll be for whatever comes next. Over the next few days, Lyra worked closely with the Europa scientists. Mason helped where he could, using his engineering skills to bridge the gap between Celesti and human technology. The work was difficult but exciting. For the first time in years, Mason felt like he was doing something important. He also found himself drawn more and more to Lyra. Her intelligence, her courage, her determination, all of it fascinated him. And she seemed equally interested in him and in humans in general. Your species is young, she told him one night as they ate dinner in the station's small mess hall. But you have so much potential. The Dracon underestimate you. That's good. What about your people? Mason asked. You haven't said much about them. Lyra's face grew sad. We are dying out. The Celesti have a genetic problem. We cannot have children easily anymore. Each generation is smaller than the last. That's why the Dracon attacked us now. They sensed weakness. I'm sorry, Mason said, reaching across the table to touch her hand. Her skin was warm and seemed to pulse slightly with an inner light. Don't be, Lyra replied. Meeting you has given me hope. If our peoples could work together, perhaps both could be saved. Their moment was interrupted by alarms. They rushed to the control room where Director Winters was watching the monitors. The Dracon ships are moving, she said. They're taking up positions around the station. On the screen, they could see the 3 black ships hovering above Europa's icy surface. They've sent a message, the communications officer said. They demand we turn over the Celesti fugitive immediately, or they will extract her by force. Mason looked at Lyra, who had gone very still. What do we do? He asked. We can't fight them, Winters said. This is a research station, not a military base. We need more time, Dr. Ellis said. We're close to understanding the Starweaver design. With that knowledge, time is what we don't have. Winters cut him off. She turned to Mason and Lyra. Is there any way to hide the crystal, to make them think it's not here? Lyra thought for a moment. Yes, I can put it into a dormant state. It will stop broadcasting its signature, but it will also stop working. We won't be able to access the plans. Do it, Winters ordered. And then we need to hide you both. The ice tunnels, one of the security officers suggested. The network beneath the station. They run for miles. Winters nodded. Good. Take them there now. As they prepared to go into hiding, a message came in from Earth. The communications officer looked up in surprise. Director, Earth Command says they've detected 3 unidentified objects in orbit around Europa. They're sending a military fleet to investigate. They'll be too late, Lyra said softly. The Dracon won't wait. As if to confirm her words, the station shook with a powerful impact. The lights flickered. They're firing on us, someone shouted. Get to the tunnels, Winters ordered Mason and Lyra. Go now. As they ran, Mason looked back at Winters. What about you and your people? We'll try to negotiate, she said grimly. Now go, the future might depend on it. The ice tunnels beneath Europa Station were narrow and cold, lit only by emergency lights that cast blue shadows on the frozen walls. Mason and Lyra moved quickly, their breath forming clouds in the frigid air. Above them, they could hear the muffled sounds of Dracon weapons hitting the station. We need to keep moving, Mason said, helping Lyra over a ridge of ice. How's the crystal? Lyra touched her arm. The glow that usually came from the crystal had dimmed to almost nothing. It's dormant. They won't be able to track it now. They continued deeper into the tunnel network. The Europa scientists had been drilling these passages for years, exploring the moon's vast subsurface ocean. Now they served as a perfect hiding place. After an hour of walking, they reached a small research outpost, just a dome-shaped room with some equipment and emergency supplies. Mason sealed the door behind them and turned on the heater. We should be safe here for a while, he said. There's food and water for a few days. Lyra sat down heavily on a bench. She looked tired, her silvery blue skin paler than usual. I'm sorry I brought this upon you and your people. Mason sat beside her. You didn't bring anything. The Dracon did, and from what you've told me, they would have found Earth eventually anyway. Yes, Lyra agreed. They always do. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the ice creak around them. Then Mason asked the question that had been on his mind since they fled the station. What happens if the Dracon get the crystal? How bad would it be? Lyra's purple eyes met his. The Starweaver isn't just a ship. It's a key to ancient Celesti technology scattered throughout this part of the galaxy. Weapons platforms, defense systems, things my ancestors built and then abandoned when they became too powerful to use safely. If the Dracon gained control of those, they could conquer everything, Mason finished for her. Lyra nodded. Including Earth. Mason stood up and checked the outpost's communication system. It was basic but functional. Maybe we can contact the station, see what's happening. He turned it on, but instead of the station frequency, he picked up something else. A faint signal that seemed to be coming from much farther away. What is that? Lyra asked, suddenly alert. Mason adjusted the controls. I don't know. It's not human, and it doesn't sound like the Dracon signals we heard before. Lyra pushed him aside and began working the controls with practiced hands. The signal grew stronger and patterns began to emerge, pulses of sound that seemed to form a kind of music. It's Celesti, Lyra whispered, her voice full of wonder. A Celesti communication signal. Your people here? They must have followed the Dracon. Lyra's hands moved faster over the controls. I can respond, tell them I'm here. Mason caught her wrist. Wait, how do we know it's really your people? What if it's a Dracon trick? Lyra hesitated, then nodded. You're right to be cautious, but there's a way to be sure. She touched her arm where the crystal lay dormant. I need to wake it up. Won't that let the Dracon find us? Yes, but it will also let me verify the signal. Lyra looked at him. It's a risk we have to take. Mason thought for a moment, then nodded. Do it. Lyra closed her eyes. The crystal in her arm began to glow again, pulsing with blue light. She placed her hand on the communication panel, and the crystal's glow seemed to flow into it. The signal changed, becoming clearer. A voice spoke, musical like Lyra's but deeper. The translator device Mason had taken from Lyra's escape pod converted it to English. This is Commander Talon of the Celesti defense vessel, Lightbringer. We have tracked Dracon hunter ships to this moon. Any Celesti survivors, please respond. Lyra's face lit up. It is them. She pressed a control and spoke rapidly in her own language. The translator converted her words for Mason. This is Lyra Vasarine. I am on Europa with a human ally. The Dracon are attacking a human research station. I have the Starweaver crystal. There was a pause, then the voice returned, sounding shocked. Lyra Vasarine. You're alive? Hold your position. We're coming for you. The communication cut off. Lyra turned to Mason, her eyes shining. They're coming. My people are coming! Before Mason could respond, the outpost shook violently. Ice cracked along the walls and the lights flickered. They heard a terrible scraping sound above them. "They found us," Mason said, grabbing an emergency pack. "The crystal signal. We need to move." They ran back into the tunnels just as the ceiling of the outpost collapsed. Through the broken dome, Mason saw a Dracon ship hovering above, its black hull seeming to swallow the light around it. A beam shot down, cutting through the ice like it was nothing. "This way," Mason shouted, pulling Lyra down a side tunnel. They ran as the ice behind them melted and shattered under the Dracon weapons. The tunnel led deeper toward Europa's subsurface ocean. They could feel the ice getting thinner beneath their feet, hear the water moving below them. Ahead, the tunnel opened into a large cavern where the scientists had built a small submarine dock for ocean exploration. "The sub," Mason said, pointing to a small pill-shaped vehicle docked at the edge of a hole in the ice. "We can hide under the ice shelf." They ran to the submarine. Mason had basic training on these vehicles from his military days. He helped Lyra inside and began the startup sequence. The Dracon weapons were getting closer, melting through the ice ceiling of the cavern. The submarine's engines hummed to life. Mason sealed the hatch and detached from the dock just as a Dracon ship broke through the ceiling. The submarine slipped beneath the ice and into the dark waters of Europa's ocean. "Will they follow us?" Lyra asked, looking up at the ice above them. "I don't know if their ships can go underwater," Mason replied, navigating the sub deeper. "But we can't stay down here forever." "Limited oxygen." Lyra touched the crystal in her arm. "The Celesti will find us. They can track the crystal, too." They moved through the dark water, the submarine's lights illuminating strange formations of ice and rock. Europa's ocean was vast and unexplored, a world unto itself beneath the icy crust. After an hour, the submarine's oxygen warning light came on. They had maybe 30 minutes of air left. "We need to surface," Mason said. "Find a pocket of air under the ice." As he began to guide the submarine upward, the water around them lit up with a strange, pulsing glow. At first, Mason thought it was some kind of sea life. Then he realized it was coming from outside the submarine, a ship moving through the water toward them. "Dracon?" he asked nervously. Lyra shook her head, a smile spreading across her face. "No, Celesti. That's a Celesti scout vessel." The ship approached them, sleek and silver, with the same bioluminescent lines that had marked Lyra's escape pod. It moved alongside the submarine, then extended a docking tube that attached to their hatch with a soft thump. "They're offering us a way in," Lyra said. She touched Mason's hand. "Come with me," Mason hesitated. "These are your people. Will they welcome a human?" "They will welcome the one who saved me," Lyra replied. She leaned forward and, to Mason's surprise, pressed her lips gently against his. Her kiss felt like electricity, making his skin tingle. "And they will honor what is between us." Mason wasn't sure what she meant by that, but he nodded. "Let's go." They opened the hatch and moved through the docking tube into the Celesti ship. Inside, it was warm and filled with the same blue light that seemed to be part of all Celesti technology. 3 figures waited for them, tall like Lyra, with the same silvery blue skin and white hair, but dressed in what looked like armor that shifted colors as they moved. One stepped forward, older than Lyra, with lines on his face and eyes that were deep blue rather than purple. "Lyra Vazarin," he said in a musical voice that the translator rendered into English. "We thought you were lost." "Commander Talon," Lyra said, bowing slightly. "I would have been, if not for this human." She gestured to Mason. "This is Mason Carter of Earth. He freed me from Dracon captivity and protected the crystal." The commander looked at Mason with curious eyes. "Then we owe you a great debt, Mason Carter of Earth." He turned back to Lyra. "But now we must leave quickly. The Dracon have called for reinforcements. And there's something else. Something you must know." Lyra tensed. "What is it?" "The High Command has fallen." "There was betrayal from within. That's how you were captured in the first place. Someone gave your location to the Dracon." Lyra's face showed shock and then deep sadness. "Who?" "Commander Selvik. He has been working with the Dracon for years. When we discovered his treachery, civil war broke out among our people. That's why it took us so long to find you." Mason watched as Lyra absorbed this news. Her whole world had changed while she was a prisoner. "And now?" she asked. "Now you are more important than ever," Talon replied. With the Crystal and the Starweaver plans, we might still have a chance. The Loyalists are gathering at the Haven system. We must get you there. The ship shuddered suddenly. Warning lights flashed. The Dracon have found us, one of the other Celesti said. They're attacking the ice above. We must surface and reach our main vessel, Talon ordered. Prepare for emergency ascent. As the Celesti crew rushed to their stations, Mason pulled Lyra aside. What does this mean for us? For Earth? Lyra's purple eyes were troubled. It means everything has changed. My people need me more than ever. And Earth, she hesitated. Earth is now part of this war, whether your people realize it or not. The Celesti ship Lightbringer moved through space at incredible speed. From the observation deck, Mason watched as Jupiter and its moon shrank behind them. Beside him stood Lyra, her silvery blue skin reflecting the stars outside. Where are we going? Mason asked. The asteroid belt, Commander Talon answered, joining them. There's something there you both need to see. 2 days had passed since their escape from Europa. The Dracon ships had pursued them at first, but the Lightbringer was faster. The Earth fleet had also given chase briefly, confused by the alien vessels in their system, but they too had fallen behind. What's in the asteroid belt? Lyra asked. Talon's face was serious. Ceres, the largest asteroid. But it's not just an asteroid. It's one of the ancient Celesti outposts, one that the crystal in your arm can activate. Lyra touched her arm where the crystal glowed beneath her skin. I didn't know. Few did, Talon replied. It was classified information, known only to the High Command. And now, with the betrayal, Mason looked between them. So this outpost, it can help us fight the Dracon? It can do more than that, Talon said. It can send a signal to all remaining Celesti throughout this sector of the galaxy. It can call them to arms and... He hesitated, looking at Lyra. It can complete the process that your father began. My father? Lyra's voice was barely a whisper. What process? The genetic work. The solution to our reproductive crisis. Talon's blue eyes were intense. Your father found a way to reverse the damage to our genetic code. He encoded part of the solution in the crystal, along with the Starweaver plans. That's the real reason the Dracon want it so badly. They don't just want to win the war. They want to ensure the Celesti can never recover. Mason watched as Lyra absorbed this news. Her face showed shock, then understanding, then determination. How long until we reach Ceres? She asked. 6 hours, Talon replied. You should rest before then. Both of you. He nodded to Mason and left them alone on the observation deck. Lyra turned to Mason, her purple eyes filled with emotion. My father. He never told me any of this. He sent me on the mission to oversee the Starweaver construction, but he never mentioned Ceres or a genetic solution. Mason took her hand. He was protecting you. If you didn't know, you couldn't reveal it under Dracon interrogation. You're right, Lyra said. She squeezed his hand. I'm glad you're here with me, Mason. I couldn't do this alone. You're not alone, he replied. Not anymore. They spent the next few hours resting in quarters provided by the Celesti crew. The room was small but comfortable, with the same blue light that seemed to be everywhere on the ship. Mason lay on a bed that adjusted to his body, thinking about how far he had come from his solitary life on Mars. Now he was on an alien ship, heading toward an ancient outpost, involved in a war between species. And then there was Lyra. What she had said about a life bond between them, was that possible? Could a human and a Celesti truly be together? The thought both excited and frightened him. A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Lyra. I couldn't sleep, she said, entering the room. Too much on my mind. She sat beside him on the bed. In the dim blue light, her skin seemed to glow from within. Mason reached out and touched her face. She leaned into his hand. What happens after Ceres? He asked. If we can activate the outpost and send the signal, the Loyalist Celesti will gather. We'll have a fighting chance against the Dracon. She paused. And if my father's genetic work can be completed, my people might have a future again. And us? You and me. Lyra smiled softly. Among my people there is a saying, stars cross vast emptiness to find each other. I believe we were meant to meet. Mason, whatever happens, I want us to face it together. She leaned forward and kissed him. This time Mason was ready for the electric feeling that came with her touch. He pulled her closer, feeling the warmth of her against him. In that moment, the war, the crystal, the fate of galaxies, All of it seemed distant compared to the miracle of finding each other across the stars. They were interrupted by an alarm. The ship's communication system activated. "All crew to battle stations," Commander Talon's voice announced. "Dracon vessels detected ahead. They've reached Ceres before us." Mason and Lyra rushed to the bridge. Through the main viewport, they could see Ceres growing larger, a massive asteroid in the distance. And surrounding it were 3 large Dracon warships, bigger than the hunter vessels that had chased them before. "How did they know?" Lyra asked. "The traitor must have told them about Ceres," Talon replied grimly. "They've been waiting for us." The bridge crew worked frantically at their stations. The Lightbringer's weapons systems came online, glowing panels lighting up around the ship. "We're outnumbered," one of the officers said. "The warships outgun us 3-1. Talon turned to Lyra. "We need to get you to the outpost. The activation must happen regardless of the battle." "How?" Mason asked. "We can't just fly past those warships." "We have a stealth shuttle," Talon said. "Small enough to slip past their sensors if we create a big enough distraction." "You're going to attack them directly," Lyra realized. "That's suicide." Talon nodded. "Perhaps, but it's our only chance. The future of our people is more important than one ship." Mason looked at the Dracon warships. They were massive black shapes against the stars, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Fighting them head-on seemed impossible. "There must be another way," he said. Then an idea struck him. "The crystal, you said it can activate the outpost. Can it do anything else? Control its systems, maybe?" Lyra's eyes widened. "Theoretically, yes. The crystal is a key to all ancient Celesti technology. If the outpost has defense systems, it does," Talon confirmed. "Powerful ones. But they can only be activated from inside." "Then that's our plan," Mason said. "The stealth shuttle takes us to Ceres. We get inside the outpost. Lyra activates it and its defenses. Then we hit the Dracon from both sides, your ship and the outpost." Talon considered this for a moment, then nodded. "It could work. But you'll have to move fast. Once we engage the Dracon, they'll know something is happening." "We can do it," Lyra said with determination. The plan was set in motion. While the Lightbringer prepared for battle, Mason and Lyra boarded the stealth shuttle. It was tiny, barely large enough for 2 people, with controls designed for Celesti hands. Lyra took the pilot's seat. "I can fly us in," she said. "The outpost entrance is on the dark side of Ceres, away from the Dracon ships." The shuttle launched silently from the Lightbringer, its systems running at minimal power to avoid detection. They curved away from the main ship, using the asteroid belt for cover as they approached Ceres. Behind them, the Lightbringer moved toward the Dracon warships, weapons charging. The battle began with bright flashes of energy lighting up the darkness of space. The Dracon ships turned their attention to the Celesti vessel, just as planned. Lyra guided their shuttle around to the far side of Ceres. As they got closer, Mason could see that the asteroid's surface wasn't natural. Parts of it had been shaped, with geometric patterns barely visible under centuries of space dust. "There," Lyra pointed to a dark spot on the surface, the entrance. She landed the shuttle near the spot. They put on spacesuits, Lyra's designed for Celesti physiology. Mason's an emergency human-compatible one from the shuttle's stores. Together they stepped out onto the surface of Ceres. The gravity was minimal, making them bounce slightly as they walked. They reached what looked like a seamless part of the asteroid's surface. Lyra placed her hand against it, and the crystal in her arm glowed brightly. A seam appeared in the rock, widening into a doorway. Stale air rushed out, equaling the pressure. "The outpost has been sealed for thousands of years," Lyra said through their helmet communicators. "But it should still function." They entered a dark corridor that lit up with blue light as they walked. The architecture was similar to the Celesti ship, but older, with designs that seemed more organic. The corridor led them deeper into Ceres, to a large circular chamber filled with dormant technology. In the center of the chamber was a pedestal with a depression that matched the shape of the crystal in Lyra's arm. She looked at Mason. "Once I activate it, there's no going back," she said. "The signal will call all remaining loyal Celesti to this system. Earth will be drawn fully into our war." Mason thought about what that meant. His home planet, still new to space travel, suddenly thrust into an ancient conflict between advanced species. But he also thought about what would happen if the Dracon won. The slavery, the destruction, the end of the Celesti. "Do it," he said. Earth would have to face this eventually. Better with allies than alone, Lyra nodded. She removed her helmet inside the pressurized chamber and rolled up her sleeve. The crystal in her arm pulsed brightly. She placed her arm on the pedestal, aligning the crystal with the depression. There was a flash of blue light. The crystal seemed to grow, extending filaments into the pedestal. The entire chamber hummed with power. Panels lit up around them, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room showing Ceres and the space around it. "It's working," Lyra said, her voice filled with wonder. "The outpost is awakening.